Welcome into this edition of the Barn Hoops Podcast. I am your host, Jacob Hillman. Brad Law from Village Vice joins me. I was able to drag him away from going back and forth with those Alabama fans over on Village Vice, and we're going to talk NCAA tournament expansion and what I think we'll agree on why it's bad in college basketball. But here's the thing. It's inevitable at this point that the NCAA tournament is going to expand, and whether it's 72 or 76 teams, that remains to be seen. But at this point, kind of just expecting that news drop to come at some point over the next few months of the NCAA tournament expanding on the men's and women's side to 72 or 76 teams. Quite frankly, again, I think it's something that's not necessarily good for the sport. I don't think it's going to ruin the tournament by any means, but it really is just something that has been a long time coming. And in my opinion, the tournament was perfect at 64 teams, but here we are at 68, about to jump up to 72 or 76.
You know, Jacob, my opinion on this has actually changed a little bit in the last couple of days as I've looked into this a little bit more. First of all, I agree with you. It is inevitable. Television makes every decision in college athletics today. Right, wrong, or indifferent, agree, disagree, or don't care. Television makes every single decision in college athletics. And more games mean more ratings. It means, who are you watching True TV on a random Tuesday night in August? No. But you'll watch it on a Tuesday and Wednesday night. Yeah, it is inevitable. And I look back at this. 2000 was the last year that we had 64 teams in the tournament. It's been a quarter century. It expanded to 65 teams in 2001. Well, today we have 30 more Division I teams than we had 25 years ago. There's on average, we're getting more than one additional team in Division I ranks every season. So the percentage of teams that make the NCAA tournament has gone down or will go down if teams continue to be added to Division I and the games don't increase. So you actually have a lower percentage of teams that qualify for the tournament today than you did when it was 64 teams.
Well, yeah, and that's really the biggest pushing point is for more access for programs outside of, I think front-facing outside the SEC and the Big Ten, but let's be real. If you look at the last few years, it really all these at-large bids have gone to SEC, Big Ten, and ACC or wherever schools that it doesn't really track there. But like you said, this is all because of TV and adding games. And like you said, True TV, it's not something you're watching in the middle of August or September, I guess, unless it's a rainy day at the beach and you're watching Impractical Jokers. But other than that, you look at March and you look at Google and everyone's wondering where True TV is on their streaming service or on their satellite, whatever it is. And that's something that's been consistent for the last decade and a half since the first four became a thing. And, that transitions me into this point of, the first four has produced a couple of Final Four teams, but it's also produced just some stinkers of games and teams that didn't seem like they belong in the NCAA tournament. So obviously VCU made the Final Four the first year of the first four. And then since then it was UCLA back in the COVID year in the bubble. UCLA beat Michigan State in overtime in the first four and then went on to the Final Four where it ultimately fell to Gonzaga. I don't know. To me, it's just, and I think even diving a little deeper into it, there are not very many Sweet 16 teams out of the first four. I think it's two other teams that have made it out of the first four into the Sweet 16 other than those Final Four teams. And to me, that just shows that there isn't that much or that many great teams getting placed in these games where
Yeah.
are they worthy of a spot in the NCAA tournament? Maybe. That I think it's a valid thing to say that they are worthy of a spot, but it's not making this impact on the tournament. Like you're not seeing these runs by VCU or UCLA every day. UCLA is a product of one being a blue blood, being UCLA in the bubble in a format like that. Those kind of programs are going to excel, and then VCU just being the ultimate Cinderella run. So
Yeah.
I just don't know if it's one of those things where in my head I feel like, yeah, these teams don't belong, or if it's, are we just oversaturating this product? And I think that's more so where I lean.
Yeah, the only, I'm okay with a couple of 11 seeds playing a couple of power conference, like middle of the pack power conference teams that were both on the bubble, like the last four in. If you give me the group and it's 100% of these are the last 12 to 16 at-large teams that made it in, and it's only those games on Tuesday night and Wednesday night, that's great. I think that's a better product because like the teams we're talking about being the last two or three or the first two or three power conference teams that are left out, that's where the talk comes from. Now, after the expansion, that'll continue to be where the talk comes from. It's who should have been number 73, who should have been number 77, who should have been whatever that next number is. Though that's where the talking point is going to be. And what I'd love to see us do away with, what I hate about the current format, those first four games are fine if they're all 11 seed, last ones in. Those are your bubble games, and you can call them bubble game instead of the first four, which is a real shoddy like mirror image of the final four. So we try to make it symmetrical, and it's a bad product. Call it the bubble games. Call it the bubble round. Here's the bubble round. It's all of the teams that were at large bubble teams. Let's don't take away. We have the same number of conferences that we had 20 years ago. And my biggest, like the biggest pet peeve that I have concerning the tournament is that two of those first four games are 16 seed versus 16 seed. The magic of part of the magic of that first weekend is the 16 seed that ain't got a shot to beat the 1 seed. By the way, no 1 seed was ever defeated until we expanded the tournament. They ain't got a shot to beat the 1 seed. I know Maryland, Baltimore. I understand, but in the old format, never had a shot. I don't like seeing one of those teams eliminated on a Tuesday or Wednesday. They don't get to make it to the weekend. So give me no 16 versus 16, because when they expand it, they're going to do that. They'll go 16-16. They'll go 15-15. They'll do some stuff like that. And that's what I'd like to see us do away with. Let's just make it the bubble round rather than the automatic qualifiers playing in those first four.
To play a little bit of a devil's advocate, because I mostly agree with that, I do think that 16 seeds benefit a little bit from those games because, one, it gives them a chance to really win a game.
Yeah.
That's something. And then if you do win a game, you're playing twice in a week and getting that kind of exposure. So I see that as a positive for them, but I think you're right. The allure of a 16 seed making the NCAA tournament and not even getting to play on Thursday in the actual big dance, because again, well, yes, the first four is officially part of the NCAA tournament. It doesn't feel like it. Everyone knows Thursday at 11:15 Central Time.
Yeah,
that's when you're tuning in to watch the NCAA tournament, and then you're just gonna zone out and watch basketball for 4 straight days.
Yeah.
Thinking about that really on Tuesday, Wednesday, like, oh, well, there's games. I guess I'll watch them after work or whatever. But I just think that, yes, while I think that would be the preferred method, that's what I want to see if they are to expand, when they do expand. But yeah, unfortunately, I think we're just going to keep seeing a lot more of the Alabama States versus the St. Francis's of the world. And while those games do provide some excitement, quite frankly, that was the most exciting first four game I think we've had in quite some time before Alabama State went on to play Auburn in Lexington. Yeah, it's just it sucks for a St. Francis not to get that opportunity to play.
Yeah.
Arena or wherever it is in Providence to play against that actual 1 seed and go for the Goliath upset.
Yeah, and I think about the SWAC teams who are still like, I don't know if a SWAC team has ever not been a 16 seed, and Alabama State won that game, so they did get to go on. But how many times has that SWAC team played in the first four and not gotten the chance? Like, I think I don't really care about giving a 16 seed an advantage and double exposure or whatever. They're 16. The allure is, you nailed it, they get to play the one. They get to play for that Goliath upset. St. Francis, oh, great. They made the NCAA tournament. And they're done on Tuesday after playing Alabama State, a team that they could play, in
December.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess they could play Auburn. They could play a 1 seed in December, but it's a very different kind of game than in an NCAA tournament atmosphere.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, again, what we love about the tournament is how anything can happen. And we've seen over the last 10 years where, okay, a 16 seed can upset a 1 seed with UMBC as well as Fairleigh Dickinson over Purdue. Like, all right, this has happened now a couple of times. It's not going to happen often, but it's happened more now than in the last 50 years or the existence of the tournament.
Yeah. And to take it back to those bubble teams, that should be I think you weight it appropriately when, all right, an 11 versus an 11 or a 10 versus 10 or maybe a 12 versus 12. I don't know. But you have those bubble games. If you lose a bubble game, that's your NCAA tournament experience. That's it. Have a better record in a power conference. Have a better record in a better don't go 8-10 in a good conference. Don't and make it in because of the strength of it. Don't let your conference pull you across the line to qualify for the tournament only to lose on a Tuesday. That's the appropriate result for you. And then if you win that game, great. Now you're really in. Now you're actually in the tournament on a Thursday or Friday game.
So that kind of leads to my next point of, you look at the SEC and how last year it was the best it's ever been and one of the best conferences of all time, and brought 13 teams to the NCAA tournament. That includes the first 4 team in Texas, who lost to Xavier in the first 4, then ultimately took Xavier's head coach, Sean Miller. But it's something that the trend you see, and Matt Norlander did an article about a week ago on CBSSports.com about how these at-large bids have really started to trend towards the Big Ten and the SEC and other conferences like the Big 12 over the last several years. Now, obviously, all of those conferences have been the best in college basketball, without a doubt. The SEC has been at the forefront the last 2 years, I'd say. Prior to that, they were right there. And then while the ACC has fallen off a little bit, you still have the powerhouses like a Duke and a North Carolina that are generally pretty good. North Carolina State's going to be better this year with Will Wade joining the program. And then you go to the Big 12, who I consider probably the most underrated conference over the last 10 years or so. Some years they've gotten their fair share of love, but other years I feel like no one's really talking about the Big 12. So, is this going to give the SEC, its entire conference in the field? Probably not quite, but you're going to see that number 13, probably that record broken. You're going to see a 14th SEC team in the NCAA tournament if it's anything like last year. Now, of course, this expansion, does it occur in 2026 or is it 2027? Because it's probably not the most difficult thing in the world to expand what's happening in Dayton to 8 teams or so, or whatever it is. And I don't know. I just think that the SEC is going to see a little bit of it's going to be good for the SEC, and they're going to see more teams in the first 4 and get a chance to get in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, your bottom teams in the league a year ago, the bottom 2 were South Carolina at 2-16 and LSU at 3-15. All right, you're gonna have 128 teams in the tournament. They ain't making it with that record. All right, but yeah, what it does is Texas got in at 6-12. Oklahoma was also 6-12. Vandy 8-10, Georgia 8-10. You get to the bottom. Now those teams are all getting in. Now at 8-10, or sorry, at 6-12 with an expanded field, you're in. Now, is that right? Like, should we discuss, should a team that won 1/3 of its conference, it used to be 500 or close to 500.
Yeah, I was going to say 8-10, maybe.
Yeah. And now, or, 6-10, back in the days when we played 16 conference games, 6-10, you wouldn't sniff the tournament at 6-10 in conference play. And now 6-12, you win a third of them, and you're in.
Well, and you look at some of these non-conference schedules that, especially the SEC, you look at Auburn, the non-conference schedule it played last year, and Alabama's doing the same. Kentucky's playing tough non-conference schedules, Tennessee, so on, so on. I'm sure, like, I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but Texas and Oklahoma are probably playing pretty strong non-conference schedule. I think Oklahoma might be the outlier last year, and that could be the reason it didn't make it in to the NCAA tournament. And it really had a win and in game against Texas in the final regular season game last year, and it lost, and that's why Texas got it.
Yeah. I will say this, the fact that we're allowing teams that win a third of their conference games in the tournament speaks to what they're doing in the non-conference, and we are getting better non-conference games. So the totality of the season, November and December, are, it's not every single game that's exciting, but you are getting better matchups in those first 2 months of the season. If you do pull back and if you didn't expand and you're not allowing more teams in, which means you have to allow worse conference records in, you're going to see teams try to get to 20 wins by scheduling weaker games in the non-conference so that they bolster their tournament resume that way. When you're letting teams in that finish with a 33% winning percentage in conference play, but you're not penalizing them for playing a tougher non-conference schedule. So maybe that balances out in some way.
Well, and then another question I have is, this probably isn't in the equation, but based off the talk about college football and the college football playoff expansion, what the Big Ten said, the SEC needs to go to 9 football games. I think the SEC needs to go to 20 basketball games on the men's side. That, the women's side needs to go from 16 to 18 just because that schedule is a mess. But for the men, it's not as much of a mess, but I do think there would be something to jump into that 20 game mark where you don't have just those 2 permanent home and away opponents with 1 rotating home and away opponent. I want to see Auburn play at home and on the road against Georgia every year, as long as that doesn't, prevent Auburn from playing in Arkansas or a Kentucky or a Tennessee home and away every other year. Like that's the kinds of things that need to happen more and more. Like Auburn and Florida should be playing home and away this year based off the fact they just played in the Final Four. And you would be able to accomplish that with the 20-game SEC schedule. But sure enough, here we are.
Well, there's so many of those compelling matchups too concerning Auburn. Like Auburn, Tennessee is a rivalry now. Auburn, Florida is a rivalry now, with Bruce and Rick Barnes, and, Bruce and Todd Golden, and Stephen and Todd Golden. And Bruce's history with John Calipari. Auburn, Arkansas is a rivalry game. Auburn, Kentucky's turned into a rivalry game. And then you've got your natural rivals in Georgia and Alabama. So, I mean, I'm kind of with you. Now, here's my devil's advocate just for the sake of it. If you add 2 more conference games, do coaches feel pressure to schedule fewer attractive non-conference games because you're going to make up for the difficulty of your schedule when you get to league play? You're also going to have to start playing conference games probably before New Year's, maybe even before Christmas. The Big Ten does that. They've got mid-December conference games.
So I thought about this a little bit because, one, the SEC doesn't schedule games around January 1st. Obviously, it's a football-dominated conference, so that's a big day for college football. You don't want college football games on that date.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if you're adding these 2 games, why not play around that time frame? And that's probably something it doesn't always fall on January 1st. If January 1st is on a Thursday, Friday, Sunday, or a Monday, you're not really dealing with that. That's not a huge issue. It's when it falls on a Tuesday, Wednesday, this past year, that it becomes an issue where there's a little bit of crossover there, and that'll happen. But I look at the fact, here would be my idea. You're going to play your first slate of SEC games on Army-Navy Saturday. So that SEC championship game, ABC is just constantly promoting, hey, next Saturday, you've got this huge slate of college basketball with the SEC versus SEC, because you look at it right now, the SEC is already playing a bunch of tough games that day.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be Auburn's Hoops Giving game against whoever that may be.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other big-time games that day or the Saturday before that are being played. And why not make it a conference slate? Why not kick off the college basketball season? Because, again, the ACC is going from 20 to 18 games. They're backtracking. And that's probably because of the strength of the conference at this point. Yeah. So, I don't know. That's where I land. I think 20 SEC games where you're playing a full slate on a Saturday in December and just start on January 1st or wherever that date falls, that Tuesday, Wednesday, 1st of January. Why not?
And we let the viewer make this call. Let us know in the comments. Would you be okay trading that holiday Hoopsgiving game every year for an additional conference game? What if you opened in a rivalry game? What if that game was against? What if that game was against Alabama or Tennessee or Kentucky or Arkansas or Florida or any of these other rivalry games the week after Army Navy? What if you're 3 weeks removed from the Iron Bowl and now you're playing Alabama in basketball?
Well, I was going to say, we talked about the possibility last episode of Auburn and Alabama playing in Vegas on the Wednesday of Thanksgiving, right before the Iron Bowl. Here's another scenario. What if Auburn and Alabama are playing in the SEC championship game in back-to-back weeks, back-to-back Saturdays, Auburn, Alabama basketball? Like, come on now.
There's no season greetings with that. There's no holiday cheer.
Absolutely not.
No Christmas spirit if that's happening. I think, Jacob, most fans would like that. I think, maybe I'm wrong, and again, you let us know. I think most fans would trade a game against Ohio State or these other teams that
Nebraska.
Auburn has played. Yeah, I think you trade that game because you're going to get other non-conference.
Right, you're playing Arizona the week before.
Right. Yeah. With teams like Houston and Arizona and Purdue on these schedules pretty regularly. Now, do any of those fall off? Back to the original question. Do you have 2 of those instead of 3? 2 of those instead of 4?
I would be interested to see what the coaches in the league have to say about this. And I know there's been discussions about this, and it really hasn't gotten a lot of traction, which might be because coaches are like, absolutely not. That could be the case. If it is, that's disappointing. But I don't know. I'm with you. I think if I would sacrifice that Hoopsgiving game or move Hoopsgiving to another date and play an SEC game on a Saturday in December after football starts. Obviously, you're not going to compete with college football, but why not Army-Navy Day?
Yeah.
Why not? Where you're able to promote the heck out of it during the SEC football championship, full slate of hoops. See you next Saturday. Like, that would be awesome. And it's probably a pipe dream, but I'm gonna keep having it. So
I mean, I think if the number of teams has gone up, which it has, the number of games should go up. I think we ought to do the same thing in softball. By the way, I think we ought to do the same thing in. There's an argument to do it for baseball too. I mean, there's just when the number of teams go up, then the number of conference games should go up. In my opinion.
Well, you just look at the fact that Auburn softball, Auburn women's basketball, Auburn softball doesn't play Alabama every year. First of all,
that's insane.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Auburn women's basketball doesn't play at home against Alabama every year. The home and away opponent rotates. So eventually Auburn women's basketball will play Alabama at home and away, but it's not going to be every year like it should be.
Right.
So again, the schedule discussion, I think right now is focused on football at the SEC table right now.
Yeah.
As SEC Media Days have wrapped up over the last few days, where are we going to see that go? I don't know. We'll see. And then maybe eventually they'll talk about a 20-game SEC schedule. But speaking of SEC Media Days, Brad Law, Zach Blackerby have had great coverage on Village Vice of Auburn at SEC Media Days, as well as Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie 5 on the Top Button Podcast. Like, I mean, we're so close to football season, Brad.
Yeah. No, we're 6 weeks away. If you put it that way, you got 6 Saturdays left before Auburn football. You got 5 Saturdays left before college football. So lots of barn derangement syndrome on display, by the way, at Village Vice in the comments section. So maybe binge watch those, check them out, and see what we're talking about next.
Listen, if you haven't hate Alabama enough today, just go watch that episode on Village Vice the other day, and you'll get it in just in time, and you can maybe go in the comment section, go to war for Brad. I think that'd be a good way to thank him for joining me on the Barn Hoops podcast.
Better known as Idiot Nerd with Glasses, I think was one.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my favorite. That was my favorite. That was the one that showed really deep thought and reflection before posting. So it was good.
Three descriptive adjectives. That's perfect. That's exactly
Right.
what you want. So,
Yep.
well, I appreciate you joining me on the Barn Hoops podcast, Brad. Again, subscribe, like, go and watch Village Vice with Zach Blackerby and Brad Law. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of the Barn Hoops podcast.